morning, afternoon, evening, good night, whatever time you're tuning in with us. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Joining me today, sitting to my immediate left, is Talmadge Rodger Varnado III.
Such a rousing applause.
Raucous emotions. All right, so Talmadge, thank you for being here.
Of course.
Indubitably, always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
And today we're going to be talking about football, the National Football League. We don't usually talk college football on here, not that I'm against it. We just haven't really yet.
I'm the one that is against
Okay,
it.
yeah. The Talmadge says, why would I do that? But we're going to be talking about a couple of guys that will soon be playing in the National Football League.
Yes, sir.
And just kind of dissecting what we saw from them and what we may see going forward. So, the two Heisman Trophy finalists from this past year, Ashton Jeanty, the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy, running back from Boise State, and Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winning wide receiver / cornerback for the Colorado Buffaloes. And I'll just pose this.
Or cornerback
/ wide receiver for the Colorado Buffaloes. And I'll just throw this out. Both these guys had what could be referred to as legendary seasons.
Yeah.
This past year, legendary careers, really. So the question is, looking at going into the NFL, how good are they really? And I don't propose that we're going to have an exact answer to that because that's not really possible. But we're going to kick that around today.
We're going to try.
We're gonna try to make this work. So we'll start with Travis Hunter, Heisman Trophy winner, 6 foot 1 inch, 185 pounder. He did play. I didn't watch a lot of their games. I saw him some at Jackson State. Mm-hmm. I've seen some at Colorado. I didn't watch like full games really of him.
I don't believe I did. I saw a lot of his games, but from bell to bell,
yeah,
I don't believe I
me
have.
too. I've seen clips, highlights. I know the stats. I know some of the ability. I'm not going to say I entrenched and watched every week because I just didn't. But we'll go over some of the numbers. He did, from what I understand, play pretty well full-time at cornerback and wide receiver,
yes,
or at least very close to it. You could debate which one he's better at, but we're going to look at some of the numbers. So for the season, his junior year, I believe it is, with Colorado, as a wide receiver, he did have 92 receptions, which for the amount of college games and that's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah.
If I just stop right there. 92 receptions, 1,152 yards, 12.5 yards per reception, 14 touchdown receptions.
That's a lot.
Okay. I'm not saying he's the best receiver in this class. Topic for another day, but I think I'd go with Tetior McMillan out of Arizona.
Most people
If I were just going to say best just receiver, Travis Hunter's in the conversation.
Yeah.
He's up there. Those numbers, even if he never played a down of defensive special teams, he still had a heck of a season.
Yeah.
All right, so then we're going to go and look at the fact that he did also play defense. So at cornerback, he did have 31 total tackles, 20 solo. If you can do the math, you can figure out 11 assisted tackles. He had 11 passes defended, pretty impressive. Did force 1 fumble, intercepted 4 passes. Again, that's pretty good numbers. The 4 interceptions are pretty good. I'll say from a numbers standpoint, his numbers as a receiver stand out more to me. I'm not necessarily saying that's where he's better, but just the numbers, I would say, stand out to me. But, and there's been some talk, I know he wants to play both sides of the ball in the NFL. The draft order has been released. I mean, there could be some change with the playoffs still going on. But for the most part, we know
where he's going to be drafted.
Where he's going to be drafted has been
set.
Pretty well decided upon, or not decided upon, but the order has been set.
Yeah.
I heard that Dion has been saying, well, wherever Travis gets drafted, he's going to play both ways. So if you don't intend on using him both ways, don't draft him. I'll tell you my thoughts on that, but Talmadge, I'm curious. What are your initial thoughts to Deion Sanders, legendary NFL player, who's now a coach, who was Travis Hunter's coach at Colorado. What's your reaction to his statement of issuing statements to NFL teams?
I think you
can't play if you don't draft him if he's not playing both ways.
I think he's throwing it out there to open up the idea that he wants to play both and to give himself a little leverage for his former player. But he can't make that call, and he knows he can't make that call. Here's what's going to happen. Anybody who drafts Travis Henry is drafting him to play both, yes. But I would think most teams are drafting him primarily as a corner. Because to me, he's a better corner than he is receiver. Number one, he's not going to play every play in the pros. That's not going to happen.
That's exhaustive.
And the bigger reason for all this is, keep in mind, it's a lot easier. Anybody that drafts him knows he's going to play some offense.
He's capable.
Well, he's going to play some offense.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's easier to create packages for offensive players than it is to say, okay, you're not going to play corner for the first 2 quarters. Oh, now I'm going to throw you in at corner.
Now let me plug you in to cover Justin Jefferson for the rest of the game.
And not that I'm an expert. I could be completely wrong, but I feel real strong about this. He'll be a corner primarily with packages to play receiver. As far as the numbers in college, you were saying how the receivers' numbers stood out more than the cornerback numbers. I think they would, though, because as a cornerback, what numbers are you going to have? If you're a great corner, you're not going to have a ton of interceptions because they ain't throwing over there anyway.
That was my next. And not only do you kind of cut off the field when you're a great corner, but also the expectations are different. And I know people know this, so it's not like I think I'm educating people, but I'll just say, as a receiver, you're not really succeeding unless you catch the pass, secure it, get your feet in bounds, come down, get yards, get touchdowns. As a corner, you just got to get your hand on the ball. All I can do is slap it away, and I've succeeded. I'm a great corner. If I catch 4 passes in a season, I'm a really good corner.
If you
totally
look
different.
At the 4 interceptions, the 11 pass breakups,
that's
15 times he was directly responsible, or in some. I guess the pass breakup could be, or interception could be indirectly, because there could have been a
tip pass or a pass. Yeah,
but you get my point. You could say directly he impacted 15 plays. That's 1 play a game, a little over 1 play a game that he made the difference. How many defensive players actually do that unless you're a pass rusher? It's not really going to happen. Because even as a defensive tackle, you can set things up for the rest of your defense to be successful, but very rarely unless you're Chris Jones or
Aaron Donald,
that type of player.
Those are about the only,
That's it. Or if you want to go back to the Tampa Bay days,
go back far enough,
But that's about it. So I would say actually his numbers at corner do impress me about evenly.
Okay.
But getting back to your original question, I think Deion has to say that because the player wants to do both.
Right.
And he's trying to inflate his value, which I don't think he needs to do because everybody knows how good he is.
Right.
But you still do it. Look, if you draft him, he's going to want to play both because that's the truth. He does want to play both.
He does want to play both, yeah.
But he knows
Deion Sanders
can't
dictate what another team does. And again, to your point,
and no team's not going to take him because of that. They're not going to say, well, I only want to play in corner, so I guess I'm not going to draft him.
Right.
They'll take their chances.
Young man, if I draft you and I want you playing corner, you're going to play corner. I'll work you in the receiver some, kind of like you said, but that's not going to keep me from drafting you if I want to draft you.
That won't stop me.
So, so I think the same thing. I project that he will probably be a starting corner unless a team drafts him that says, we're actually set at corner. I want you receiver. You could be one of the best receivers out there. That could happen. I lean towards what you're saying. Probably he does start at corner. And everybody knows in today's passing game, you got a lot of 3 receiver sets. Almost all the time you got 3 receiver sets. You got a lot of 4 receiver sets. Yeah, we'll work you into a certain amount of plays a game. If you make a big play every few games and score some touchdowns and you're a lockdown corner, hey, that's awesome. We're going to celebrate that. That's what I more see happening with him.
And I'll say this too, not only because of his situation, but just positionally. It's tougher to find that lockdown corner.
Yes.
Every year you hear the draft is deep at receiver.
There's a reason you hear it every year.
That's a slight exaggeration, but most years you hear you can get a receiver in the 3rd round. So if I'm a team drafting that high and I've got to make a choice on what side he's going to play, not only for the reasons we've already mentioned, but just because of DB I can get me a receiver later. I might not be able to get me a DB later.
You can get, just off the top of my head, Amon-Ra St. Brown was, I think, a fourth round pick when he came in the league. He's one of the best receivers in the league right now. So that you can get some pretty darn good receivers, second, third, fourth round. You can't get a lockdown corner, or very rare. I'm not gonna say never.
Yeah,
it's very
happen,
unlikely you're gonna get a lockdown.
Your chances
corner
aren't as good
that late.
Yeah.
Your chances aren't as good. So I'll make a couple of comparisons and just kind of get your thoughts, Talmadge, to a couple of guys that were sort of dual threat corner receivers, at least to an extent. First is Charles Woodson, won the 1997 Heisman Trophy at the University of Michigan. At the time, even everybody's like, oh, but he does everything. He does everything. He's a corner and a receiver and a punt returner. His offensive numbers that year, hold on. Charles Woodson's numbers on defense, let me say real quick. He had, in 11 games, he had 7 interceptions. So, more than Travis Hunter. On offense, in 11 games, he had 11 receptions, 231 yards,
That's the impressive
2 touchdowns.
Part. That's the
231 yards on 11 catches shows his playmaking ability.
That's what you look
But
at.
Charles Woodson, who was a two-way player, averaged 1 catch per game, 2 touchdowns. He was a very good punt returner. I don't have his punt return stats in front of me, but when he got in the NFL, to my knowledge, he basically played defensive back exclusively.
Yeah, especially as time went on.
Yeah.
I think early on
there
tried
were some
to mix
gimmicks
him in,
with
but
some And then the other comparison I'll make is the aforementioned Deion Sanders. At Florida State, he was a cornerback and punt returner. I don't recall him playing receiver hardly at all. As a senior, he intercepted 5 passes, scored 2 touchdowns, did intercept 14 passes for his career with 287 return yards. So he averaged 20.5 yards per return on interceptions with 3 career touchdowns. He was a very dynamic punt return. Discuss him for another day. You could argue he's at least amongst the best punt returners in NFL history and amongst the best cover corners in NFL history. The speed was just undeniable. When he got to the NFL, again, it's kind of the reverse of Charles Woodson. As time went on, some with the Falcons, but 49ers, Cowboys, and later with Baltimore and the Redskins, they would use some gimmicks to put him a receiver now and then. Deion did not play a lot of receiver.
When he came to the Cowboys, to the point you just made about Travis, Prime actually said, I'm coming here because they're letting me play offense. Which they did, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't nearly as much as you would think based on the statement that he made.
That's why
which goes right back to saying, yeah, you can say what you want to. It doesn't always play out.
You can't always dictate. You can't always control that. So I say that to say, I'll pose this question to you. Looking at Travis Hunter, is he basically the same level as Charles Woodson and Deion Sanders were, but he just got the opportunity to play receiver more? Or is he genuinely a one-of-a-kind athlete, the likes we've never seen? Is he levels ahead of Charles Woodson, Deion, and anybody else?
This is tough for me to comment on because I don't want to shortchange anybody, and what do I know? Plus, the other two, you have a pro career that you can look on where this young man's pro career hasn't played out yet.
It down in
so
the NFL
it's tough to make that comparison. But I'll make it because you're asking. I'll do the best I can with it. I would say that of the 3, obviously Prime is the best. Then
we have to go on so far, yeah.
Then I would go Woodson, and then I would go Travis Hunter.
Okay.
That's just me.
So you don't see him as this way ahead of them. He's 3rd out of 3 from what we've seen so far. Granted, in defense of Travis Hunter, he hasn't played it down in the NFL yet, as Talmadge said. But that's kind of where you see him.
Well, and here's the thing, too. Now, I will put this on Deion, which is kind of going back to the statement he made. What this proves is when he could control it, he did.
He did, yeah.
Because no other coach was going to let Travis Hunter do that. Well, I shouldn't say no other, but more coaches would say no to him than say yes to him. If Travis Hunter had gone to Alabama, yeah, you might play some plays at receiver just because we made that promise to you, but he wouldn't have had that exposure to do that. So,
and it's very likely, and I don't want to speak for someone else, but it's very likely that Deion did this just to say, this is what nobody quite did for me. I'm going to do this for this young man because he is good enough. I'm going to show people that it can work.
I would agree with that.
There might be a little bit of that.
I would say there's some of that, and even more so, I would say, again, it was his show. And for that reason, he wanted to use it. To your point, I could have done this, so I've got somebody who can, and so he did it. But also, I think Deion's a little different. When you're at Jackson State, you have to do things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
Because you're not going to get the top recruits. But now Deion's there, and look, if you can play both ways, now you can come too. Even at Colorado, even though it's in a bigger conference, obviously, it's in a Power 4 now? Because the Pac-12 is not
something like that, yeah.
Even though you're in that conference, you're still a lower tier team on that conference. So Deion's trying to set a culture and to show, come here, I'm going to do things that other coaches won't do.
Come here if you want this opportunity. Yeah, no, that's very true.
And it gives them a leg up, or at least a more competitive leg with the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Notre Dames
the Penn
and the Ohio
States, Notre Dames,
yeah.
and Ohio States, yeah. Okay, so yeah. We had not discussed I don't think I'd ever mentioned the name Travis Hunter to Talmadge prior to this.
We hadn't yet.
But that's pretty much the exact outlook I have. I think the young man, what he accomplished was phenomenal. I don't disagree with him winning the Heisman because he accomplished some things that no one else ever had.
Right.
Nothing against any of that. I have no reason to think he won't be a very good NFL player. Is he going to be a Pro Bowler on both sides? Come on. I
would doubt it.
I will be stunned.
He will be a Pro Bowler, but not on both sides.
Yeah. No one's ever, just the stamina it takes and to succeed. If you're covering the Jamar Chases and Justin Jeffersons, and then you're going to go out and burn people on defense too, like you don't have that kind of stamina. I don't know that any human does.
And even people don't even think of this, even the mental aspect it takes on you. Because now during the week you got to be in offensive meetings and defensive meetings. When do you get that mental break? And he's handled it so far. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he hadn't handled it. But handling at the college level with a coach that allows you to do it is totally different from going to the good old boy network of the NFL where these are pro men. Now it's pro in college too, to be honest with you. But in name, this is pro, the best in the world. You might not have the opportunity to do both full time because you're not going against some poor receiver in college. You're going against all pro receivers.
You're going against somebody who deserves to be in the NFL.
And I got to study all game for that. I got to know that game plan. And then I'm going to learn the offense too. That's a lot.
Oh, it is. And every team in the NFL, I mentioned Justin Jefferson, Jamar Pursuit diligently, Amon St. Brown. Every team in the league has at least one receiver that can seriously do some damage. If you're the shutdown corner, I don't care who you play.
I'm a Titan fan, so maybe not, but I get your point.
Almost every team in the league has at least one receiver.
Calvin Ridley.
You got to at least show up for Calvin Ridley. Let's give him a little bit of credit. And before we go to Ashton Jeanty, that might be a good segue. I recently discovered I actually do have a favorite NFL team. I've gone several years.
Yes.
I grew up 49ers fan. Then I was a Rams fan with Kurt Warner. Since Kurt has been retired, I hadn't had a favorite team. I've been okay with that. There's a lot of players I like, and I can watch any team, and I've been okay not having a favorite team. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Kentucky watching some football games, and my cousin John White says to me, "So is Washington your favorite team now since Magic is one of the owners?" So my all-time favorite NBA player, the reason I started watching basketball, Irvin Magic Johnson, is now co-owner of the Washington Commanders. And when my cousin John asked me that, I sat there and I said, maybe they should be. And we both started laughing. I hadn't thought about that. And then I said, Jaden Daniels is also one of my favorite players. Why didn't I think about this sooner?
Right.
So I'm gonna try to move the laptop. I don't know if y'all can see, but
I was gonna slam it down.
I had to make I had to make the official shift. Got the Jaden Daniels shirt. The Washington Commanders are now my favorite team. It just took my cousin asking me that question for me to realize it. So, Magic Johnson, Jaden Daniels, my apologies for not realizing this sooner.
Let them lose this weekend. You might change your mind.
No, I will not. We're shooting this the day that they play at Detroit. That's later tonight. I would love it if they win. Detroit looks like they can beat anybody.
Yeah.
Win or lose. And I told you guys this before the draft. I said, I am a Jaden Daniels fan no matter where the young man gets drafted. I'll be a fan of him for his whole career. And so it just lined up that he got drafted.
Well, we know Chris is a Jaden Daniels fan.
We do know. Louisiana State representation up in here. All right, so yes.
Funny you say that, though, because I'm not one of the people. I've got a second favorite team. That's always been so corny to me. But I have to say, I like Washington an awful lot, and he's one of the reasons why.
Okay.
Love their uniforms now, too. I like a lot what they're doing. And so I can't say they're my second favorite team because, again, that sounds like third-grade stuff. But I'll watch them when they play. I'll put it at that.
Okay. Yeah, well, so there we go. So that Jaden Daniels, I want you as a guest on the channel soon. I'll wear my shirt that day, too. We'll talk about LSU.
Well, if he comes on the channel, I am a Jaden Daniels fan and a Washington
See there,
fan.
I'm already recruiting for you, Jaden.
Come on. I'm a fan.
Come on the channel. But what made me think about that was Terry McLaurin is a deadly receiver. So that's why I was like, let me talk about a favorite team. But yeah.
And he is.
If Travis Hunter, you got to try to guard a Terry McLaurin or Drake London, one of Chris's not favorites, or any of these guys, you aren't going to also go out there and get 150 yards receiving.
Now, I'll say this. If he does pull it off, then congratulations to the young man. I hope he can if that's what he wants to do. It'd be phenomenal to watch.
Oh, I'd love to see it if
you put yourself amongst the greats the first year you play if you pull this off.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I don't want to see it. I'm just saying it's
even if he's
tall,
a lockdown
order.
Yeah. Even if he's a lockdown corner that scores 5 or 6 receiving touchdowns on some specialized plays per year, man, that's still awesome.
Yeah.
That's still awesome. So, okay, it seems like we pretty much have the same outlook on Travis Henry. So now we'll talk about Ashton Jeanty. I did say that. He got me talking about the Titans a while ago and Derrick Henry. Travis Hunter.
Travis Henry played for the Titans, too.
Travis Henry did play with the Titans.
Had 1,000 yards,
Maybe
as a matter
we'll
of fact.
talk about him another time, too.
He was so excited somebody mentioned his name.
He's like, what? Somebody just woke him up.
Maybe it's Travis Henry will come on the channel.
That might be okay, too. All right, so Ashton Jeanty, running back for Boise State, was the Heisman runner-up, 5'9", 215-pounder. As a true freshman at Boise State, he did have 821 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. As a sophomore, 2023, 1,347 yards, 14 touchdowns, averaged 6.1 yards a carry. He also had 43 receptions for 569 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns as a sophomore. Before I even go to his historic junior year, if he was eligible for the draft in 2023, that's the year Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, Braylon Allen, Blake Corum. Would you agree that Ashton Jeanty might have been a reasonably high draft pick amongst that rookie running back class?
Out of that group, knowing what I know now, I would have said he would have gone second. But it's hard to say because
at the time it'd be hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know.
But he'd be in the mix with those guys I just named.
No question.
So as a junior, he did play 14 games, 374 carries, which led the nation in Division I, 2,601 rushing yards, 7 yards per carry, 29 rushing touchdowns. Phenomenal numbers, phenomenal season. Didn't watch a lot of his games end to end. I did see the Penn State game, which ended Boise State season. A lot of the knock on him is the level of competition. I will say, and not that Oregon had the greatest defense, but that's a big game, big opponent. He did gas them for 191 yards and 3 touchdowns early in the season. So, honestly, you're playing Division I. You put up 2,601 yards, average 7 yards a carry. You're a darn good football player, whoever you played against. Now, what were you going to say?
I mean, in situations like this, I just look at the skill set. And the skill set's there because he can catch the ball in the backfield. He is elusive when he runs. He can carry a workload even at his size because he took a lot of carries. So there's a lot of positives.
Yards after contact were phenomenal.
It's not like we get a copy of the All-22 to really see each play. I do at the pro level, but at the college level I don't. So it's hard to say. Plus, we know that he's going to be devalued because of the position that he plays. So he's harder to know.
Okay.
But just based on his accomplishments, that alone gets him in the conversation.
Yeah. So he, I'm interested to see where he goes. I think what he did on the college level. At one point, and I don't think it quite ended up this way because I think Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, some other guys cut into this by the end of the year. But at one point, Jeanty had more yards after contact than any other running back in the nation had just rushing yards. That's how good the young man is. You take away what he did before contact, he was still leading the nation at one point.
I should know this, and I don't, because I haven't looked at the mock drafts like I normally do, because it's way early in the process. But where is he mocked to go by most?
Most of what I've seen projects Dallas Cowboys to take him at number 12.
And that's exactly why he won't go there. But okay, thank you for telling me, because they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. and I don't see them taking a running back that high, but he is talented enough to maybe they're enticed to do it. It wouldn't surprise me if he dropped a little lower than that.
It wouldn't shock me just because the value of the position. Yeah. Nothing against Ashton Jeanty, but no, the value of the position. The one thing I'll say, 2 years ago, Bijan Robinson went number 8 to the Falcons.
And I would say even with the numbers that Jeanty put up, Bijan Robinson's a better player.
Probably so, because the competition level was different. And I'm a huge fan of Bijan, but I'll still say probably. Bijan's 5'11", 215. Jeanty's 5'9", 215.
Yeah, so 2 inches.
Yeah, but the
that lower,
I get what you're saying,
that lower center gravity
could
help you,
too, yeah.
But it could hurt you. I mean, if he hides behind blocks really well because of his height,
that's what I'm saying.
That's
it could be an advantage to him being 5'9" versus 5'11".
But that durability piece is big too. So
I don't disagree, but they're similar size. Jeanty did play senior high school at a school in Frisco, Texas, so he has expressed interest in coming to play for Dallas. He has said on social media, I want to come play for y'all. I want to kind of come back home.
And if I'm in college ball and talented enough, I'm expressing interest to play for 32 teams.
I was about to say, I'm going to want to play for whoever takes me. Yeah. Now, actually, let me go over a few things, and then we'll go back to the draft, like where we might see him going, because that is interesting. I could see him dropping. But with all the hype and success, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not
sense.
still
Don't get me
there.
wrong; it makes sense for Dallas.
Yeah.
And he's
it makes perfect sense.
And
for
he's
Dallas.
got that type of talent. I'm just afraid of the position thing. But he could be so good to where people overlook it.
That's
because
what I'm saying.
GMs are getting smarter. The last couple of years, they'll make the exception where for years they didn't make the exception.
Exactly. The year Bijan went number 8, Jahmyr Gibbs was in the top 20 also. So we do see it some, but your point is very valid. Will he be an exception like Bijan and Jahmyr were? We will find out soon. April 26th, I believe,
He'll be here sooner than we
is the
think.
draft. So I'm going to make comparisons with a few guys that had similar success.
By the way, watch the draft on the channel live with us. Just kidding.
maybe not just kidding. We'll see. I don't think I told y'all yet, but that's something I was already got in the wheelhouse. So it's interesting you would throw that out. I was already actually thinking about that. Might be our first live episode. We'll see how that goes. But I'll talk about Barry Sanders, who, topic for another day, but most people will say at least arguably or amongst the greatest NFL running backs of all time.
Oh, everybody says that.
Yeah.
Arguably is he number 1 or not?
Okay, and I would concur. You can make cases for a few others. You can make a real good case for Barry. Barry's junior year, he also left after his junior year.
Right.
Oklahoma State. Ashton Jeanty nearly broke Barry's single season NCAA record for rushing yards. Jeanty finished with 2,601. Barry had 2,628, so 27 yards shy. Barry averaged 7.6 yards a carry. Ashton 7.0. Barry had 37 touchdowns, so 8 more than Ashton Jeanty. Here's another caveat to it. Jeanty played 14 games. Barry played 11.
Right.
So even if Jeanty had broken it, no offense, young man, but Barry's stats would still be more impressive because of the yards per game. And Ashton would probably agree with that. I mean, you look at the numbers.
Even if he didn't, facts are facts.
I mean, facts are facts. And being second place to Barry Sanders on this list.
Nothing to sneeze at.
Heck of a good place to be. So there was Barry's numbers. I'm going to compare a couple of the guys, and then I'll get the question to you that I have, Talmadge. Next guy I'm going to make the comparison with is Alexander Mattison. Now, there's a gap between the success Barry Sanders had and the success Alexander is having, but the comparison I'm making with Ashton Jeanty is Alexander Mattison played at Boise State. one of the biggest criticisms of Ashton Jeanty is the level of competition. A lot of people say, oh, after that Penn State playoff game, you saw he's not really that good. You saw he wasn't that good. Here's the thing. He barely had over 100 yards rushing. It did take him 30 carries to do it. He averaged like 4 point something yards a carry that game versus the 7 he did on the season. Here's what you got to take into account. Penn State's defense was one of the better run defenses in the country. Also, their head coach flat out said, my players got sick of hearing the name Ashton Jeanty because I drilled into them all week. We're not letting this guy beat us. We're doing everything we can to contain him. That's how much respect I have for the young man. They game planned. No one else on Boise State was a threat. It was all about let's contain Ashton Jeanty.
Well, that's true, but that's true every game they play. I mean, that's no different than any other game.
It is,
I get your
but
point,
this game ends the season, so the urgency was a little more. You're true enough too, but Penn State made this will end our season.
They have the athletes to do it,
and they had the athletes to do it. So, and if you watch that game, which I did, they did hold him in check. He had a few games where he broke through and broke some tackles, and you still saw what the young man's capable of. And all this talk about, oh, he's not that good. His worst game was still 100 yards, where he averaged over 4 yards a carry.
Plus, that's a small look.
And that's one game.
Anytime somebody does that, of course your numbers are going to drop against better competition. It doesn't mean you're not good. It doesn't mean that if you play that same competition 15, 16, 17 times, you don't get better as well. I mean, now if this had happened 8, 9, 10 times against better competition, I'm starting to look at it. But one game is not going to – it may make me – think a little
raise
more,
an eyebrow,
but it's not gonna. If I've got this guy graded high all year long, one game's not gonna say, "Well, I'm gonna put him down to this level."
Now I wouldn't draft him to the 4th round. Yeah, no, and the thing too is, yes, he'll be playing against NFL defenses. He's also going to be running behind the NFL offensive line and have NFL caliber talent around him. So,
and I was about to say
all
the
these
same
things
thing.
have to be put into
Penn State's not going to be
perspective.
able to say you're the only good player they got. So that's going to help him too because he's going to go somewhere where they got to respect
They've got other
players.
NFL level players on their team.
What if he goes to like a Cincinnati who needs a back?
Jamar R. and Joe Burrow.
And they re-sign T. Higgins. All of a sudden.
You got a loaded offensive. Even if he goes, and I'll get back where I was going, but even if he goes to Minnesota, Aaron Jones is a free agent. He's still got Justin Jefferson, Hawkinson, Addison, whoever their quarterback is. He's got people to take the pressure off him. You can't just game. If he gets drafted by Dallas, we have heard of C.D. Lamb, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's guys that can take the pressure off no matter where he goes. I don't care who he gets drafted by. Anyway, back to Alexander Mattison. Sorry, Alexander, to keep you waiting. He did have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons also at Boise State as a sophomore and junior. He had 1,086 with 12 touchdowns as a sophomore, 1,415 yards, and 17 touchdowns as a junior. Very productive college career.
Yeah.
Could have stayed as a senior, and I'm completely speculating here, but because he had 15 as a junior, could he have flirted with the 2,000-yard year if he'd stayed as a senior? Now, I won't say that he wouldn't have.
It's possible.
I don't know. I'm not making the claim he would have. Based on what we see, I'm not afraid to say like he maybe would have. Mm-hmm. I don't have his entire NFL stats in front of me, but I can tell you thus far he has not gone over 700 yards rushing in a season in the NFL. That was 2023 with Minnesota.
He showed some flashes, though. I like him as a player.
I do like Alexander Mattison, and you've probably heard me say before, I think he's a solid running back when he's utilized properly. Yeah. The years that he backed up Dalvin Cook, he had between 400 and 500 yards rushing every year. Yeah. Was averaging 4.5 yards carry. These last couple of years have fallen off some. With the Raiders last year, he got a lot of opportunity. He did have some injuries, and the Raiders' whole team was abysmal.
Right.
I can't shoulder all that on Alexander Mattison. Yeah. Josh Jacobs last year with the Raiders, he only averaged 3.6 yards a carry. Look what he did in Green Bay. So, again, Mattison, if you put him in the right situation, you pair him with another good running back, you use him like the guys in Detroit, I think he's a pretty decent running back, to be perfectly honest. But thus far in the NFL, his best season's been half as productive as his best season at Boise State was. The last comparison I'll make, and then we will get back to Ashton Jeanty, is a guy by the name of Melvin Gordon III, played at Wisconsin. He had over 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns as a junior. He did come back his senior year 2,587 yards.
Is that why you're making the comparison? The
Yes.
Senior year? Okay. Because I was about to ask you why the comparison with him, but
Yeah.
I get it now.
He came back as a senior, 7.5 yards a carry, 29 touchdowns. He was second to Barry Sanders until Ashton did it this year. Now, Ashton did it as a junior.
Right.
The competition levels are different. But Melvin Gordon III was a guy that came back as a senior and then put up a monster year.
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon III, thus far in the NFL, has only had one season of 1,000 yards. He's had 800 and 900 a few other
Didn't
times.
he have a major injury?
Yeah, he's had
Yeah.
he's had injuries, so it's not
Because
just about
when he first
inability.
came in, I thought he
Well,
looked
based
like
on
a
this
stud.
and his first couple
Yeah.
years, I was like, the Chargers got themselves a heck of a running back. I don't know if he's even on a roster right now, would just say.
I was going to ask you that.
I don't think he is.
The last place I knew was Denver, right?
It was Denver
Okay.
last I knew. I don't think he's in the league anymore, and it may be all the injuries.
Okay.
But having said all of that, digesting all of this, looking back at Ashton Jeanty, and I know this won't be an easy question to answer, but sometimes I like to ask things that aren't easy to answer. Do you see Ashton Jeanty more like Alexander Madison, Melvin Gordon III, or Barry Sanders? Is his production going to be half of what it was at Boise State like Madison? Will he be more like Melvin Gordon? Is he anywhere near Barry Sanders?
That's the toughest one you've asked. But I'll tell you why, though. No one's comparing to Barry. Okay. Now, he may prove
Let's get
to,
that out of the way.
but I'm not going to say it until I see it.
Right now, I
Not-
can't say
so
that.
I'm
If he
not
gets
saying
there,
that.
hey, awesome. But
And,
yeah.
then the other two, I think he's going to be better than Madison because they'll probably be in a better situation because they're going to get drafted higher. They're going to ask more of him. And if he can shoulder the load, he's going to get more opportunity.
Right,
Because you're not drafting him to be the backup. Now, you might draft him to be in a committee, but he's not going to be
He's
the
not.
backup.
He's going to be at the very least in a 50-50 timeshare with somebody.
Right.
You mentioned Cincinnati. Him and Chase Brown might be.
Which
a duo.
he's going to be the lead
yeah,
back,
but
though.
he'll be. Yeah.
But the carries may be split. And the other reason why this is difficult is I can't really compare anybody to Melvin Gordon because he's hurt.
Because of all the injuries. Yeah.
I would say if Melvin Gordon would have stayed healthy, I say Melvin Gordon's the best of what you, not counting Barry, but of the
Well, yeah,
three,
yeah.
Melvin Gordon's the best.
So you'd say obviously Barry Sanders, Melvin Gordon, Ashton Jeanty, Alexander Madison.
That's probably how I'd
Without
rank
the
it.
injuries,
But
yeah.
with the injury, can you really? People are laughing at me saying Melvin Gordon better, but when Melvin Gordon was healthy,
let's look back at what he did in college and early on in the
and he
NFL
was
without the
he
injuries.
was a bit of a bigger back too, was he not?
I don't have his size in front of me. Let me see if I can pull him up.
I don't
real
want to
quick.
swear by it, but I don't think it was 5'9".
I think he was a little bigger as well. While I'm looking that up, I will say I think Ashton Jeanty probably will be somewhere. Okay, yeah, well, 6'1", 215.
Yeah.
So the weight is the same. We talked about the center of gravity a while ago, but 6'1". I think Jeanty, as you said, will be drafted to be a lead back. He could, contingent upon where he's drafted, be in a split. But if teams are smart and use him with somebody else the way Detroit does, he could still be a very productive running back. He's not going anywhere to back anybody up. So, yes, he could take over. A lot of running backs could lose their job to Ashton Jeanty next year. There's indubitably just no question. He is that good. And I talked a while ago about, well, let me say this first. I'd like to see him without the injuries and see how good he can be. I can't put him in the stratosphere with Barry Sanders right now because I just won't do that for anybody unless they prove it.
Right.
I could see Jeanty being a multiple-time Pro Bowler. I could see him being a very good running back.
No doubt.
Is he even on the level of Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson? I don't know, but he might be. And if you don't know, I'm a big fan of Bijan. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot as well.
That's a tough one.
Oh, well, that's why I said might.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
I said
I'm
might.
not, and I'm not saying. I'm thinking it tough the other way. I'm thinking
Like he might be.
Yeah, it's
hard to say.
man.
It is.
I think if I were picking those three, I'd pick Gibbs, but that you.
All three of them.
You know
are so good.
You know my famous phrase. You could talk me into the other two.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm a big fan of Bijan. I'm a fan of all of them. But you could, I won't. I don't know. And until we see
that breakaway
Jeanty,
speed of Gibbs is almost like Chris
his
Johnson
speed's
level.
deadly. It's like, it is Chris Johnson level pretty much. Bijan is just a really complete player. I think Jeanty
And tough
is
runner,
as well. Bijan's a strong runner. He's a very good pass protector as well. People don't. Bijan's a good receiver and a very good.
That's
pass
why
protector.
Bijan doesn't have to split time. I'm not saying he
Right.
won't, but he didn't have to. because
Algiers a solid backup, but Bijan deserves.
I
the playing time
guarantee
he
you,
gets.
if Bijan wasn't as good pass protector as he was, the backup would.
You would see Algier out there more on
because
third,
because he proved the year before Bijan got there that he could carry
He was
the
a
load.
1,000-yard rusher
so,
before they drafted Bijan. So wherever Jeanty gets drafted, I see him like maybe, and David Montgomery was great too, and it still is, but he's going to cut into whoever's workload wherever he goes. So now, Talmadge, with you being the Tennessee Titans fan, they do have the number 1 overall pick. I don't want to launch into a totally different subject of who you want them to draft. But of these two guys, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, do you have any interest in taking either one of them? Which one of them would you rather have? Is that even a thought?
Where they are, I wouldn't take either. But of the two, if
Okay.
I had to take one, obviously I would take Travis. He's a more highly rated player. He gives you more versatility, and to me, he's more of the sure thing. So
Y'all have also already got Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, so not that Jeanty's not great, but you might need a corner worse.
But to me, running back at this point, especially the way they're viewed now, going back to what we said earlier, it's almost a luxury pick. If your team's already built out and you can afford to take a running back of that talent,
then why not?
take it.
Yeah.
But to your
Why
point,
wouldn't you do
in
that?
Tennessee's case, even if they didn't have the 2 backs they already had, they have so many other things to fix.
Yes,
If you're
I
taking
concur.
a running back, plus they're number 1, you're not taking a back at number 1. But I'm saying,
the last time that
but I'm
happened?
saying
Yeah.
even if they were 7, 8, or 9, they wouldn't take a back because they need pass
got
rusher,
too
they
many
need
other-
receiver, they
offensive
need
line,
offensive
receivers,
line,
pass rushers,
quarterback. So
Gotcha. Now, since I'm a new Commanders fan, currently they hold the 26th pick. That could change again as the playoffs go. Neither one of these guys are going to be available at that time. Jeanty has a more likelihood of falling.
I doubt it, but I could.
If
It wouldn't
somehow-
shock me if he was.
If somehow he falls this far, my goodness, yes, please come on board, young
they'd be
man.
all over that.
We'll find a place to work. I like Brian Robinson Jr. perfectly
they'd
fine.
be all over that.
Please draft Ashton Jeanty to put in that
Austin Eckler,
offense.
see you later.
He's still a pass-catching back. He's still
see
in the
you
second
later.
year of his deal. We'll keep you on the roster, Austin Eckler.
See you later.
Jaden Daniels and Ashton Jeanty, my goodness, please.
about Jeremy?
If he's
The
available.
other Boise
Jeremy
State.
McNichols, also Boise State. Come on board, all of you. We'll make that work. They have bigger issues too, so I don't want them drafting running back in the first round unless Ashton Jeanty somehow falls.
Yeah, especially where they're drafting.
Yeah,
it's
where they're
different.
drafting, I want another receiver to go with McLaurin, or I want a pass rusher or an offensive
And you
line
can
or a
justify,
defensive
I've
back.
already got my quarterback. We already made the playoffs. I got a year to play with. Not
Yeah.
saying you want to waste a year, but you built up some credibility.
Correct.
You're not building from the bottom up. You can take that luxury pick, especially someone as explosive as we're talking about. So
If
at 26,
Jeanty's
I'm all
available
over it.
At 26, oh my goodness, yes, let's take it. All right, so anyway, those are our outlooks. Sound like we have pretty similar outlooks on both these guys. Going to be fun to wait and see what happens with both of them. So anyway, hope you guys liked the channel. You guys and you girls. Hopefully we have ladies watching the channel.
Guys and girls.
As well. Guys and girls and guy. I don't know. Hope everyone enjoyed watching this episode. If you did like it, please like the episode. Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to the channel. It will help enable me to continue to give you more of this type of content and many other types as well. For Talmadge Rodger Varnado III, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Thank you all for stopping by. Hope you have a great week. And I hope I see you again real soon. Yeah, man, if they could...